Hey guys, tonight we step through a doorway you didn't know you were waiting for. It isn't a door made of wood or stone, it's a softer kind of entry, one that swings open inside your imagination, lit not by a candle or a lamp, but by that hazy glow you sometimes get just before drifting off. Welcome. Tonight we're wandering into the stories of Greek mythology. They're old, older than memory, older than books, older even than the ruins tourists line up to take selfies with. And you probably wouldn't survive a single one of them. Truly. In a world full of angry gods hurling thunderbolts, unpredictable sea monsters rising without warning, and curses that last multiple generations, you'd last about maybe 2 minutes. 3 if you had snacks. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. You stay seated by the shoreline fire, letting the last crackle of embers settle into the night. The voices around you have grown softer, as if the gathering has slipped into a rhythm of breathing together. And then the storyteller clears their throat, slow and deliberate, and says, "Before there was everything, there was nothing." You lean closer. That nothing had a name, chaos. Now, the word doesn't mean the same thing to them as it does to you. Today, when you hear chaos, you might picture your laundry pile, or your email inbox, or the way the grocery store looks the night before Thanksgiving. But in the myths, chaos was not a mess. It wasn't screaming children and mismatched socks. It was more like a gap, a yawning openness, a deep breath before anything else existed. Not frightening, not hostile, just waiting. If you try to picture it, your mind starts to wobble. No sky, no earth, no ocean, just an endless expanse that isn't even dark. Because there isn't light yet to make darkness possible. It's the kind of thought that makes your brain feel slippery, like you're trying to grab mist with your hands. You laugh quietly to yourself. Probably not the best idea to ponder this right before bed, but here you are. From that emptiness, the first presences begin to stir. Gaia, the earth, steady and fertile. Tartarus, the deep underworld pit. Nyx, the night herself, soft and shadowy. Eros too, not the cute winged Cupid from Valentine's cards, but a raw force of attraction, the pull that draws things together so creation can actually happen. You listen as the storyteller rolls these names into the air, one after another, each one feeling heavy with possibility. It's funny, historians still wonder if these figures were always meant to be gods in the sense we think of gods, or if they were more like personifications, ideas made visible. Was Nyx really believed to rise every evening as the night sky itself? Or was she a way of giving shape to the mystery of dusk? Nobody can say for sure. That's part of the magic. The ancients didn't draw sharp lines the way we do between symbol and reality. For them, story and world blurred together like watercolor on wet paper. You notice how comforting that is in a strange way. Instead of facing a cold void at the start of time, the Greeks imagined companions emerging almost immediately. Earth to hold you, night to wrap you, desire to pull life into being. It's like they couldn't bear to think of true loneliness. The universe, even at its first breath, was already full of personality. A quirky detail lingers in your mind. Some versions say chaos even gave birth to Erebus, a spirit of deep shadow, and Nyx, who together formed a cosmic couple. They became parents to Ether, the bright upper air, and Hemera, the day. It's like watching a domino chain, where even nothingness can't help but tumble into something. And if nothingness itself has children, you wonder quietly, can it ever really be nothing at all? As the storyteller pauses, you notice the sea behind you still whispering, steady as a heartbeat. The myths and the waves are both doing the same thing, repeating, circling, lapping over the edges of silence. And you, caught between the two, feel yourself drawn into the rhythm. The night no longer feels like emptiness. It feels alive. You think about how every culture wrestles with this same question. How did everything begin? Some say with a word, some with an egg, some with a dance. The Greeks chose chaos, and out of it, a whole family tree of gods and goddesses sprawling wider than any olive grove. The fire throws up one last spark, and the storyteller's hand hovers in the air, drawing an invisible circle as though marking the boundary of this new, expanding universe. You follow the gesture with your eyes and imagine the circle swelling bigger and bigger until it could hold the world, until it could hold you. You rest your head slightly to one side, half smiling, half drifting. The gates of myth are no longer behind you. You've stepped past them, and now you're standing at the beginning of beginnings, when there was nothing. And then, everything. Imagine yourself standing on the edge of a coastline, the air soft and salted. You're not in modern Greece, not near the crowded beaches with parasols and jet skis, but in a version of the world where the horizon is vast and unbroken. The sky is a slow fade of twilight blue, and waves murmur against stone as though whispering secrets they've carried for centuries. Somewhere behind you, hills are draped in olive groves. Somewhere farther inland, marble temples gleam faintly under moonlight. This is where the myths begin, not in textbooks, but in the spaces between firelight and shadow. In a small circle of people sitting under the night sky, words begin to rise like sparks. An old voice, patient and rhythmic, tells stories not for entertainment alone, but to explain why the world is the way it is, why the seasons turn, why thunder strikes, why love sometimes feels like a gift and sometimes like a trap. You sit among them, part of the gathering, though no one looks surprised to see you there. The warmth of the fire touches your skin, and you can almost taste the faint sweetness of roasted figs being passed around. The voice weaves through the night, and the stars above lean closer, as if listening. You feel yourself leaning too, slowly slipping into the current of these stories. The first thing you notice is how alive everything feels. In these myths, the sea is not just water, it is Poseidon, moody and restless, a presence with a will of its own. The sky is Zeus, watchful and volatile, ready to flash with sudden temper. The harvest is Demeter, the hearth is Hestia, and even the shadows beneath the earth belong to Hades, who waits in silence. Nothing is empty, nothing is just itself, and that means you are never alone, even when you think you are. A gentle breeze across your cheek could be a nymph brushing past. The faint creak of a tree at night might be a dryad shifting in her sleep. You walk through a world thick with unseen company, and though that can be comforting, it can also be unsettling. You might pour out a small splash of wine on the ground before drinking, just to make sure the gods are acknowledged. That's how the ancients lived. Every act, no matter how small, had its echo in the divine. There's a strange comfort in that. Imagine knowing the universe isn't indifferent. Imagine believing that every bolt of lightning is an opinion, every shift of the wind a signal, every dream perhaps a whisper from something larger. Historians still wonder if the people who told these myths truly believed every detail, or if they understood them as symbolic, a kind of poetry woven into life. We may never know, but what we do know is this. For them, the stories mattered. They shaped not only how they explained the world, but how they felt inside it. Now, picture yourself leaning back in the grass as that voice continues, steady and timeless. The firelight flickers, throwing shadows that make the storyteller's gestures larger than life. The stars wheel above, and for a moment you aren't in two different times at all. You aren't a modern listener, and they aren't ancient speakers. You're just people, together, sharing a night where imagination is the only currency. And in that hush, you begin to realize that these gates you've walked through, the ones into myth, don't close behind you. Once you've stepped in, they stay open. The stories follow you home, into your dreams, into the quiet spaces of your thoughts. The gods have a way of slipping through the cracks. A sudden storm might make you think of Zeus. A stubborn plant blooming in a sidewalk crack might remind you of Persephone. This is your entry point, a threshold, a gentle beginning, like dipping your feet into cool water before wading deeper. The night is wide. The myths are endless, and your journey is only just beginning. The fire burns lower, the voices soften, the sea keeps breathing against the shore, steady as your own. And you, sitting here, are exactly where you're meant to be. The storyteller lets the silence linger, as though even the night itself needs to take a breath after the vastness of chaos. Then, with a low and steady voice, they guide you forward. From the swirling emptiness, from the first shapes of being, something begins to form that feels familiar under your feet. Gaia, the earth herself. She stretches wide and firm, a foundation beneath all things. Her presence is not loud. She doesn't arrive with thunder or fire. She is steady, patient, a motherly weight that settles in gently, like the cool reassurance of stone beneath your hand. And where there is earth, there must also be sky. Uranus, vast and endless, unfurling above her in shimmering light. He arches over Gaia like a dome, and together they make the first union of land and heavens. The storyteller's hands move outward, one up, one down, as though showing you the balance of two forces that lean toward one another. You can almost picture them as a pair of dancers, one grounded, one soaring, joined in a rhythm older than memory. It's oddly comforting, this image, earth and sky as partners. You imagine lying on a grassy hillside with stars overhead, and for a moment you feel as if you're literally between them, resting in the space of their eternal embrace. Maybe that's what the first listeners felt too, safe in the thought that the world itself was shaped by beings who cared enough to connect. But of course, mythology never stays simple for long. Gaia and Uranus begin to fill the world with children. Their offspring are powerful and strange. The Titans, massive and radiant, each carrying a different force of existence. Oceanus with his rolling waters, Hyperion with his brilliance of light, Rhea with her maternal strength. You lose count as the storyteller lists them one after another, like stars spilling across the sky. And beyond them, more children come. Being so peculiar, you can't help but raise an eyebrow. The Cyclopes, one-eyed smiths with thunder in their hands. The Hecaton sharers, giants with 100 hands and 50 heads each. You try not to laugh, picturing one of them attempting to put on a shirt. Here's the widely accepted part. These children were said to represent forces too vast for ordinary explanation. Storms, oceans, fire, the deep foundations of Earth. They were myths wrapped around natural power, given names and family ties so people could hold them in mind. But here's the lesser-known detail. Uranus wasn't exactly a proud dad. In fact, he feared his own children. Historians still wonder if his behavior symbolized an older tradition of sky gods being replaced by younger generations, or if it was simply a way to explain why powerful things seem hidden or buried beneath the world. Either way, Uranus stuffed some of his offspring deep inside Gaia, pushing them back into her body, as though refusing to let them live freely. That image unsettles you. It makes Gaia's role more complicated. She's Earth, mother of everything, yet forced to carry children trapped inside her against her will. You tilt your head, considering the tension. What does it mean when creation is both nurturing and painful at once? When life is abundant, but also restrained? Maybe that's part of the reason the myths endure. They ask questions that never go out of style. The storyteller's voice softens as they describe Gaia's sorrow. She, vast and fertile, holds countless beings, but many of them are stifled, pressed down by Uranus's fear. The image lingers like a heavy pause before you're nudged forward to what comes next. You glance upward instinctively, as if you could catch a glimpse of Uranus yourself. The sky tonight is scattered with stars, and the dark dome above feels impossibly large. For a moment you wonder, If you were there at the start of things, would you have rooted for Uranus to stay in power, or would you have felt Gaia's hidden children pressing restlessly, waiting for release? The question hovers unanswered like so many in these old tales, but you don't need an answer tonight. You just let it drift, like a star sliding slowly across the sky, as the earth and sky remain stretched around you, eternal companions, eternal opposites. The fire crackles, and you sense the storyteller shifting, their tone deepening as if preparing you for something heavier. You're no longer simply watching Gaia and Uranus forming a cosmic embrace. Now, you're stepping closer to the children they've brought into being, the Titans. The word itself feels enormous. Titan. It stretches tall in your mouth like a stone pillar. These are not the playful trickster gods you'll meet later, not the mischievous Hermes or the lovely Aphrodite. The Titans are older, heavier, and their presence feels like carved granite. You picture them striding across the land like mountain ranges come alive, each step echoing like thunder in your chest. The storyteller begins to name them again, but this time you hear the rhythm more clearly. Oceanus, the endless river that circles the world. Hyperion, the bright light of the sun before Helios would claim it. Thea, luminous and watchful. Coeus, who carries intelligence. Creus, who lingers at the edges of space. Mnemosyne, memory herself, whose name you whisper quietly, realizing she would someday give birth to the Muses, the very goddesses of storytelling. You smile at that. Without her, you wouldn't be sitting here by this fire at all. And of course, Rhea. Strong, maternal Rhea, whose destiny will be tied to the survival of the Olympians. Even before the story reaches her turning point, you can feel the threads tugging. She is patient and enduring, the kind of presence you lean toward instinctively, like a tree offering shade. It's fascinating how the Titans embody the bones of the world. They aren't whimsical, they aren't temporary. They're like the architecture of existence: sunlight, memory, ocean, stability. Historians still wonder if their names came first from poetic descriptions of nature, or if they were seen as actual beings worshipped in early shrines before the Olympians took the spotlight. Either way, they feel older, less concerned with human affairs, more about the structure of reality itself. Then there's the quirkier side. Did you know that some ancient sources suggest that Oceanus was so vast he didn't actually live on Olympus with the other Titans? Instead, he just circled the world endlessly like a cosmic moat. He was too big, too essential to squeeze into a mountain palace. You imagine him like that, just looping around forever, slightly salty, slightly bored, but keeping everything contained. The storyteller's hands move wide, drawing circles in the night air as they speak. The flames cast giant shadows across the sand, making the shapes loom and sway like enormous figures. You find yourself almost ducking your head, as though one of the Titans might actually brush past you if you're not careful. The air feels thick with their presence. But here's the thing, the Titans may be monumental, but even they are not beyond conflict. Uranus still presses some of his stranger children down into Gaia's body, refusing to let them rise. The Titans, born into this uneasy household, start to feel the pressure of tension. You can imagine them exchanging wary glances, sensing that their father's fear is shaping their fate. And you, sitting at the edge of the firelight, realize that this is one of the patterns you'll see again and again in Greek mythology. Power doesn't rest easily. It's always shifting, always being challenged, always handed from one generation to another with a mix of triumph and tragedy. Tonight, you can almost taste it in the air, the weight of inevitability, the slow build of a story about to break open. Still, for this moment, the Titans stand tall and steady, rulers of a world still young. They are the architecture of existence, the scaffolding upon which everything else will be built. And though the winds of rebellion are stirring, you let yourself sink into their presence, imagining the ground beneath you as their gift, the starlight above you as their inheritance. The storyteller's eyes gleam in the glow of the fire, and you feel them pause, letting the names of the Titans hang in the air like constellations, strong, silent, waiting. The night air shifts, as if the sea itself has leaned closer to listen. The storyteller's voice drops low, steady, and you feel the warmth of the fire soften into a kind of hush. It's time to meet one of the most unsettling figures in the ancient stories, Cronus, king of the Titans and father of the gods. His tale isn't just about power, it's about fear, hunger, and the way cycles of history sometimes bite down on themselves like a snake eating its own tail. Cronus wasn't the firstborn Titan, but he was the one bold enough, or reckless enough, to take action against Uranus. Remember those children Uranus hid away inside Gaia, refusing them light or freedom? Gaia grew weary of that pain. She fashioned a sickle, sharp and gleaming, and asked her children who would dare to use it. One by one, the Titans hesitated, all except Cronus. He stepped forward, willing to wound the sky itself, and when the chance came, he struck. The storyteller doesn't rush this part. They let the words slide slowly into the night air, as if even now the moment carries a weight you can feel in your chest. Cronus severed Uranus's power, freeing the trapped siblings and taking the throne for himself. He became king, seated on the first great golden age of gods. But here's the catch. With power came paranoia. A prophecy whispered in his ear. One of his children would overthrow him, just as he had overthrown his father. And that's when the hunger began. You imagine it, the fear of losing control gnawing at you so much that every new birth feels like a threat. Rhea, his wife and sister, bore him children one after another. Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, Poseidon, and Cronus swallowed each one whole. Not in rage, not even out of cruelty, just cold, desperate fear. One by one, the tiny cries were silenced, pressed into the cavern of his stomach, hidden away before they could grow strong enough to challenge him. You shiver slightly at the thought, and yet the firelight softens it, framing the act not in gore but in symbolism. Historians often note that Cronus's name is linked to cycles of time. Kronos, the endless turning wheel. Time itself devours all things, doesn't it? Every day is swallowed by the next. Every generation makes way for the one after. Maybe Cronus wasn't just a paranoid king, but a shadowy reflection of time itself, unable to let go. Here's the quirky part you might not know. In some fragments of the myth, Cronus didn't simply gulp them down and forget about them. Some poets imagined him carrying those swallowed children around, alive but trapped, a bizarre living prison inside his body. It paints an odd picture, Cronus sitting on his throne, ruling the world, while a muffled family reunion chatters somewhere in his stomach. You can't help but smirk at the absurdity, even as the image carries its own strange weight. And still, the prophecy lingered. He had swallowed 5, but a 6th child was coming. Rhea, weary of her losses, plotted quietly, hiding her grief beneath her queenly calm. The storyteller glances at you in the firelight, their eyes glinting as though letting you in on the secret. This time, things would not go as Cronus planned. For now, though, you sit with Cronus in his uneasy reign. The fire flickers, and you picture him pacing through a vast, echoing hall on a mountain that isn't yet Olympus. A king crowned in victory, haunted by prophecy, weighed down by the strange diet of his own children. And you, listening with the hush of waves at your back, find yourself wondering, was Cronus truly monstrous, or was he just another part of the cycle, trapped by fear of the future the way we sometimes are, clinging too tightly to the present? Historians still debate if the myth is about power, or about time, or simply about the inevitability of change. Tonight, you don't need to choose. You just let the question linger, humming in the back of your mind as the story waits for the next twist. The storyteller lets the fire pop and hiss for a long while, giving you space to absorb the image of Cronus on his uneasy throne. You can almost hear the echo of those swallowed voices inside his body, muffled but alive. And then the tale shifts. A new sound enters the night, quiet at first, then more distinct. The cry of a newborn. It is the cry of Zeus. Rhea, worn thin by sorrow, had carried 6 children, 5 taken from her arms, swallowed before she could even hold them close. But when the 6th child was born, something in her broke, or maybe something awakened. She refused to surrender this baby to Cronus. So, she plotted in silence. With the help of Gaia, the ever-patient Earth, she devised a trick. You imagine her in the shadows of night, the pain of birth still fresh, wrapping her infant son in soft swaddling cloth. But instead of carrying him to the throne room, she placed a stone of equal weight in the bundle. Her hands lingered on the fabric, smoothing it with a mother's trembling fingers, and when she approached Cronus, she offered the bundle as if it were the child. He, too suspicious to question her, swallowed it whole. A stone for a son, and so the real Zeus remained safe. The storyteller smiles faintly as they speak, their voice warming, as though a small victory has been won. You can almost feel Rhea's relief seeping through time. For once, her arms did not end empty. But where does a baby grow safe when his father devours children? In secret. Rhea carried Zeus far from Cronus's sight, to the island of Crete, where caves yawned like protective mouths in the cliffs. The Dictaean cave, some say, or the Idaean cave, others argue. Historians still wonder which location was truly believed to be his birthplace. Shrines have been found at both, carved into the rock, as though worshippers hedged their bets. But all agree, Zeus grew in hiding. Inside the cave, the baby's cries might have given him away. So, a band of warriors known as the Curetes gathered outside. Whenever he wailed, they clashed their shields together, raising a clamor so loud it drowned out his voice. You picture it, a circle of armored dancers stomping, banging bronze on bronze, their movements almost like a ritual. A baby's lullaby, if you can call it that, though a very loud and metallic one. You can't help but grin. Imagine trying to nap with an entire drumline stomping outside your nursery. Zeus probably grew up thinking noise meant comfort. And then there was his milk. Not from Rhea, but from a divine goat named Amalthea. She nursed him with rich, sweet milk that gave him strength. One story says that while playing, the infant Zeus accidentally broke off one of her horns. From that horn flowed endless abundance, the cornucopia, symbol of plenty. It's a strangely tender image. A king of gods beginning life as a clumsy baby, knocking a horn loose during playtime. The fire throws up sparks, and you let the details settle around you like warm blankets. A cave cradling a secret, a mother's trick saving her son, a goat's patient gift, the noise of warriors dancing to shield a cry. All these fragments stitched together into a story not of thunder and lightning yet, but of vulnerability. The king-to-be, small and fragile, held alive by the cleverness and devotion of others. You tilt your head and wonder, would Cronus have noticed the difference if he had looked closer? Would he have felt the hard weight of stone and questioned why it lacked a heartbeat? Or was his fear so consuming that he never dared to examine what he swallowed? Historians still debate whether this detail of the stone was added later, a flourish in retelling. But for you, sitting here at the edge of the fire, it feels essential. The stone is more than a trick. It's the symbol of hope slipping through fear's grasp. Zeus sleeps now, safe in the hidden cave, while the world outside waits for the day he will grow strong enough to face the father who tried to erase him. The storyteller lets the silence spread again, and you realize you're holding your breath, as though you too are keeping the secret. The night has deepened. The fire burns lower, but the storyteller's voice carries a new charge, steady yet fierce, as though the story itself has tightened its grip. You've met Zeus as a hidden child. Now you'll watch him rise. The time has come for war. The Titanomachy. Zeus did not stay a helpless infant forever. In the shadowed cave of Crete, nourished by Amalthea's milk and guarded by the Curetes' clashing shields, he grew into strength, and with each passing year, the weight of destiny pressed heavier. His brothers and sisters remained swallowed in Cronus's belly, living echoes trapped in darkness. The world itself seemed tense, waiting for a shift. One day, the grown Zeus returned, but he didn't return alone. Gaia, eternal Earth, offered him guidance, and with her advice, he tricked Cronus into disgorging his swallowed children. Accounts vary. Some say he offered his father a potion, others a bitter herb, still others a drink laced with divine compulsion. Whatever the method, it worked. One by one, the gods emerged, whole and living, as if time itself had paused for them inside Cronus. First Hestia, calm and steady, then Demeter, nurturing and fierce, Hera, proud and sharp-eyed, Hades, shadowed with the weight of the underworld, Poseidon, restless as the sea. And at last they stood beside Zeus, no longer voiceless captives, but a family ready to rise. The storyteller leans closer, their voice pulsing with rhythm now, carrying the beat of drums. This was not a quiet rebellion. The Titanomachy shook the universe. 10 full years, gods against titans, locked in battle that made mountains shudder. The Olympians fought with youthful fire, their energy new and electric. The titans fought with ancient weight, their presence like mountains refusing to crumble. Here's the widely accepted truth. The war was cosmic, fought across heavens and earth, echoing in thunder, storm, and quake. But here's a quirky detail. Some versions say Zeus's allies weren't only his siblings. He also freed the Cyclopes from Tartarus, those one-eyed smiths his grandfather Uranus had once cast away. In gratitude, they forged gifts for the gods. To Zeus, the thunderbolt, bright and lethal, the weapon that would define him. To Poseidon, the trident, a spear that shook the seas. To Hades, a helmet of invisibility, letting him move unseen through battle. You grin slightly at the thought. It's like the world's first superhero team-up montage, each one getting their signature gear before charging into the fray. Still, the war dragged on. Imagine the sounds, the clang of divine weapons, the roar of giants, the crack of lightning striking stone. Some nights, even the stars must have looked away. You picture yourself standing on a cliff, the ground trembling beneath your feet, the air lit with fire and storm. And you wonder, would you have rooted for the Titans, those primal foundations of the world, or for the Olympians, the upstarts fighting for a new order? Historians still wonder what the myth originally symbolized. Was it memory of some ancient conflict between tribes, or simply a story about the inevitability of younger generations rising? Eventually, the tide turned. With his siblings beside him and the Cyclopes' weapons in hand, Zeus drove the Titans back. The 100-handed ones, those strange, many-limbed giants, hurled boulders with such force that the Titans could not withstand the assault. Cronus and his kin fell. Where were they sent? Some say banished to Tartarus, deep in the earth, chained and bound forever. Others whisper that some titans lingered at the edges of the world, not destroyed but waiting, half forgotten. You tilt your head at that thought. Maybe they still wait, tucked behind mountains or folded into the horizon, too old and too vast to vanish completely. The fire sputters, throwing sparks upward like fragments of battle flying into the sky. The storyteller pauses, their voice settling again. Zeus now stands victorious, crowned by thunder and storm. The Titans defeated. The old order is gone. The new has begun. But power always comes at a cost, and the echoes of that war linger, humming in the bones of the earth. You lean back, breathing in the salt of the sea, feeling the ground beneath you as if it too remembers the clash. The war is over, but the story is only just sharpening. The fire has burned down into a red, glowing bed of embers. The storyteller's voice feels lighter now, not rushed but relieved, as though the long thunder of war has finally given way to stillness. You sense the shift in the air. The Titans are gone. The ground no longer trembles with their weight, and the Olympians, new, youthful, untested, step into the world with crowns of victory. Zeus leads them up a mountain. Not just any mountain, but the tallest in Greece, Mount Olympus. You picture it rising from the mists, slopes green with forests, the peak lost in drifting white clouds. It isn't empty. It has always been there, waiting. But now it becomes something different. It becomes home. You follow them in your imagination, climbing higher and higher, the air thinning, the sky opening wide. At last you reach the summit, and there it is, a palace of gleaming marble, its columns bright even in starlight. The gates stand tall, wide enough for gods to pass through with ease. The fire has burned down into a red, glowing bed of embers. The storyteller's voice feels lighter now, not rushed but relieved, as though the long thunder of war has finally given way to stillness. You sense the shift in the air. The Titans are gone, the ground no longer trembles with their weight, and the Olympians, new, youthful, untested, step into the world with crowns of victory. Zeus leads them up a mountain, not just any mountain, but the tallest in Greece, Mount Olympus. You picture it rising from the mists, slopes green with forests, the peak lost in drifting white clouds. It isn't empty. It has always been there, waiting. But now it becomes something different. It becomes home. You follow them in your imagination, climbing higher and higher, the air thinning, the sky opening wide. At last you reach the summit, and there it is, a palace of gleaming marble, its columns bright even in starlight. The gates stand tall, wide enough for gods to pass through with ease, which means the Olympians weren't always 12 right away, sometimes fewer, sometimes more, depending on the telling. The number itself shifted like the mountain clouds, settling only later into the famous 12 Olympians. And then there's the quirky image of their daily life. Ancient poets didn't just imagine them ruling in solemn silence. They laughed, feasted, argued, and schemed. Nectar flowed like sweet honeyed wine. Ambrosia glittered like starlight on their plates. You almost smirk at the thought of them lounging like a divine dinner party. Hera side-eyeing Zeus across the table, Hermes sneaking extra portions, Dionysus making sure the wine never ran out. Gods, yes, but also oddly familiar in their appetites. You close your eyes for a moment and listen to the imagined sounds. Laughter echoing through marble halls, the faint clink of golden cups, the low rumble of thunder always lingering under Zeus's breath. Outside the palace, the world lies quiet, as though holding its own breath, waiting to see what these new rulers will bring. Historians still wonder if Mount Olympus was ever meant to be taken literally, or if it was always symbolic, a shining home above the reach of mortals. But tonight, with the firelight painting red shadows across the sand, you don't worry about that. You see the mountain clearly in your mind, and you walk its halls freely, as though you too have been invited inside. The storyteller lets the silence grow, almost playful, as if daring you to imagine what it would be like to sit at that table, to taste ambrosia, to laugh with immortals. And for a moment, you do. Then the image fades back into the night. The embers glow, the sea sighs, and Olympus gleams far above, its new rulers crowned not only in victory, but in expectation. The world is theirs now, and so the stories begin to unfold. The storyteller leans forward, eyes flickering with the firelight. Their tone shifts again, lighter, sharper, carrying a hint of mischief. The Olympians may have claimed their thrones, but power never stays neat. Even in victory, there are cracks, and into those cracks slips a figure who feels different from the others. Prometheus. His name means forethought, the one who thinks ahead. He was a titan by birth, but unlike Cronus or the others, he did not fight against the Olympians. Some say he even helped them win the war. You picture him standing at the edges of battle, not as a roaring warrior, but as a clever schemer, eyes narrowed, mind already working 3 steps ahead. Prometheus cared for humans. That's unusual, because most gods barely noticed mortals, except when they were in the way. But Prometheus looked down at those fragile figures, shaping mud into huts, striking rocks together for sparks, huddling against the cold. And he pitied them, or maybe, more than pity, he admired their persistence. They had nothing, yet they tried anyway. Here's the widely accepted part of the myth. Prometheus stole fire from the gods and gave it to humankind. But the details of how he did it vary. Some say he lit a torch directly from the chariot of the sun. Others claim he snuck into Olympus with a fennel stalk, hollow inside, and carried a spark hidden within. Either way, he brought back fire, that shimmering thread of survival, and placed it in human hands. Fire changed everything. Suddenly, mortals could cook food, warm themselves, harden tools, light the dark. The leap from animal to culture, all in a single flame. You can almost feel it now. The crackle of wood, the glow against your face, the smell of smoke rising. Maybe that's why the myth still lingers every time you sit by a fire like this one. It's not just warmth, it's rebellion. But here's the quirky part. Some ancient poets suggest Prometheus didn't just bring fire once. He kept finding little tricks for humans, teaching them skills, giving them hints, whispering ideas. A sort of cosmic life coach, except one who operated behind Zeus's back. You grin, imagining Prometheus saying, "Okay, now that you have fire, let me show you how to bake bread without burning it." Zeus, of course, wasn't amused. He saw fire as divine property, a spark too dangerous for mortals. Historians still debate whether Zeus's anger was about the danger of technology or the principle of theft itself. But whatever the reason, Zeus punished Prometheus with one of the most infamous torments in mythology, chained to a rock, where each day an eagle tore at his liver, which grew back each night. A punishment not for a day, not for a year, but forever. You let the image hover in your mind, grim yet strange. Prometheus, bound yet unbroken, watching the sun rise and set. Enduring pain without surrender. Was he a hero, a fool, a trickster who misjudged the cost? Historians still wonder if he was meant as a cautionary tale against hubris or a celebration of human defiance. Tonight, you don't need to choose. You just feel the warmth of your own fire, knowing you're holding the same gift he once carried in secret. The storyteller's eyes glimmer as they look at you, almost as though they're daring you to appreciate your own comfort, the glow of flame, the hum of energy in the air. Prometheus gave this to you, and the gods never quite forgave him. The fire in your mind's eye flickers brighter now, as if echoing the story you've just heard. Prometheus may have stolen fire for humankind, but the gods were not finished with their lesson. Zeus, especially, was not a ruler to be mocked or outwitted. And so comes the tale of Pandora, the first woman, the first gift, and the first curse. Picture the scene. Olympus, after the theft of fire, mortals below, thriving in new light, laughing as they roast their first meals, warming their hands. Zeus, above, frowning from his throne. He needed balance, a way to remind humanity that every gift comes with its price. And so, he commissioned a creation. Hephaestus, the smith of gods, shaped her from clay. Aphrodite breathed beauty into her skin, so radiant that mortals would not look away. Athena dressed her in shimmering garments and taught her crafts. Hermes gave her cunning words, a tongue sharp enough to slice truth into slivers. Each god contributed something. A gift, yes, but also a trap. And so she was named Pandora, all gifted. She did not arrive empty-handed. In her keeping was a jar, sometimes mistranslated as a box. It was sealed, and she was told not to open it. A rule that seems almost designed to be broken. You lean back, already sensing where this goes. Humans are funny like that. Tell someone don't look, and their curiosity suddenly burns like fire itself. Pandora was no different. Some say it was her own choice. Others whisper that Hermes whispered in her ear. One day, she lifted the lid, and from the jar poured out every sorrow. Disease, famine, jealousy, anger, greed. They spread across the world like smoke, seeping into villages, curling into hearts. Humanity, who once lived in simple peace, now lived with struggle. It's a dramatic origin story for suffering, explained not as accident or nature, but as a single moment of open temptation. Here's the widely accepted detail. Pandora's story was a way for ancient Greeks to explain why life is full of hardship. But here's a quirkier note. The jar didn't release only misery. At the very bottom, one thing remained: Elpis, hope. Some argue it was trapped inside, never to be shared. Others insist it stayed behind so humanity would endure. You close your eyes, weighing that. Was hope withheld, or was it preserved? Historians still debate whether hope itself was a blessing or a trick. After all, hope can keep you going, but it can also keep you waiting for something that never arrives. A puzzle tucked neatly at the bottom of a clay jar. You imagine Pandora standing over the open vessel, her hands trembling, her eyes wide with regret. And yet, maybe she doesn't look defeated. Maybe she looks human, curious, flawed, endlessly reaching for what lies beyond the lid. You catch yourself smiling. It feels familiar. How many times have you lifted your own jar, even when you knew you could? The fire crackles again, louder, as though emphasizing the lesson. The storyteller's voice softens, almost teasing, like someone trying to make you feel better after hearing something heavy. Of course, they say, if Pandora hadn't opened the jar, we wouldn't have half the stories worth telling. The embers glow in response, warm against your face. Above, Olympus gleams cold and high. Below, mortals sit around their own fires, wrestling with pain, laughing anyway, holding tight to hope. Whether it was a gift or a trick, it remains. The night around the storyteller feels deeper now. The sea is a black sheet, the stars scattered like spilled salt. The fire burns steady, not as fierce as before, but glowing with a patient rhythm. You sense the stories shifting too. The tales of beginnings, of titans and tricks, of fire and jars, give way to something more human. Not mortals yet, but the gods themselves behaving less like thunder and stone, and more like quarreling, dramatic neighbors. The storyteller smiles faintly, and you hear the next name roll out. Hera, queen of the gods, wife of Zeus. A figure both majestic and, let's be honest, absolutely terrifying if you happen to cross her. You picture her now, tall, regal, crowned with a golden diadem, robes flowing like clouds at dawn. She embodies power, dignity, and order. She is goddess of marriage and family, which sounds wholesome until you remember who her husband is. Zeus, the thunder-wielding king, is also the least loyal spouse in mythological history. If there were divine gossip magazines, he'd be on the cover every week. And Hera noticed. Oh, she noticed. Her love for Zeus was real, but her rage at his betrayals burned hotter than any lightning bolt. One widely accepted fact: she punished not just Zeus, but also the mortals and nymphs caught up in his affairs, and especially their children. The myth of Heracles, Zeus's famous son, begins with Hera hating him before he was even born. Here's a quirkier detail. Hera wasn't only wrathful, Some local cults in Greece actually worshipped her as a goddess of renewal and seasons, even linking her to vegetation cycles. In some festivals, her worshippers reenacted her marriage to Zeus each spring, treating it as a cosmic reboot of fertility and order. So she wasn't always just the vengeful wife. Sometimes she was the reason crops grew and communities flourished. Still, her temper makes the better stories. You can almost hear her footsteps echoing in the halls of Olympus, a steady, deliberate sound that makes every other god pause mid-feast. Even mighty Zeus sometimes looked uneasy when Hera fixed him with that long, sharp stare. You imagine being in Olympus during one of their arguments, thunder on one side, icy silence on the other. Honestly, you'd probably sneak out quietly with Hermes and pretend you had urgent business elsewhere. Historians still wonder whether Hera's myths reflect older goddesses being reshaped into Zeus's shadow, their independent powers folded into his narrative. Was she always meant to be a queen beside him, or did she once rule on her own? The question lingers like smoke above the fire, unanswered. And yet, despite her fury, Hera remains compelling. You lean back, seeing her not just as Zeus's counterpart, but as a force in her own right. Regal, relentless, unyielding. The kind of figure who could make you feel 2 inches tall with just a raised eyebrow. The storyteller's voice grows quieter, almost conspiratorial. She wasn't perfect, they murmur, but perfection never makes for good company. Hera made Olympus unpredictable. She made the stories worth remembering. The flames snap softly, as though in agreement. Somewhere high above, you picture Hera's crown glinting against the stars. Queen, wife, avenger, protector, all in one. And the night feels a little sharper with her watching from the dark. The fire has burned down to a low, steady glow, casting longer shadows against the sand. The storyteller shifts slightly, their face warm in the flicker, and their voice takes on a softer rhythm. After Hera's sharp presence, it feels natural to turn to another Olympian whose stories are filled with hunger, with boundaries, with choices made and unmade. This is the story of Demeter and of her daughter, Persephone. You see Demeter first tall, golden-haired, her hands always busy with stalks of grain. She is the goddess of agriculture, of harvests, of every loaf of bread you've ever held warm in your hands. The Greeks honored her with festivals at planting and reaping time, because without her, there would be no food, no survival. She is steady, generous, and deeply maternal. Unlike Hera's cold fury, Demeter's love is patient, grounding, like the soil itself. And then, Persephone, her daughter, younger, lighter, with a smile like spring sunlight. In some stories, she gathers flowers with friends, laughter carrying across the meadows. In others, she is shy, quiet, her beauty noticed only when she bends down to pick a single bloom. But always, she is near her mother, always safe until the moment she isn't. The widely accepted tale is stark. Hades, lord of the underworld, saw Persephone and desired her. He burst from the earth in a chariot drawn by black horses, snatched her, and vanished into the shadows below. One instant, the meadow was filled with her laughter. The next, silence. Demeter searched. She wandered the world with torches in her hands, calling for her daughter. Crops withered, fields lay barren, and famine spread. The gods begged her to relent, but she refused, insisting she would not let the earth grow until Persephone was returned. It's an origin myth for the changing seasons. When Persephone is with her mother, crops grow. When she descends back to Hades, winter comes. But here's the quirkier detail. Not all versions treat Persephone as powerless. Some local traditions saw her not as a victim, but as a queen who chose to rule the underworld. They spoke of her as dread, majestic, even terrifying. In those myths, she isn't just Demeter's little girl, she's the Lady of Shadows, sharing a throne beside Hades. You feel that tension as you sit with the story. Was Persephone taken, or did she decide? Was she trapped, or did she transform? Historians still debate whether the myth reflects a shift from older agricultural goddesses into darker, dual roles, fertility and death entwined in one. Still, the emotional center is always Demeter, a mother's grief so strong it brought gods to their knees. You picture her now, her torches blazing against the night, her footsteps shaking the fields barren, her face set in quiet, endless determination. The storyteller pauses, letting the weight of that image settle, then softer. And yet, in the end, Persephone comes back. Not forever, not always, but enough. Not forever. The fire crackles, and you imagine the first shoots of spring grass breaking through the soil, fragile yet defiant. Life returning because mother and daughter are reunited, at least for a time. It is a cycle, a rhythm, an eternal back and forth between loss and return. You lean back, breathing slowly, letting the pattern echo in your chest. Summer, winter, joy, absence, life, death, and life again. The story of Demeter and Persephone is not just myth, it's the rhythm of the world itself. The storyteller leans closer to the fire now, their voice gaining a sly, mischievous curve. If Demeter and Persephone were about cycles and longing, the next tale is about speed, cunning, and laughter, slipping between cracks. You feel it before the name is spoken, the trickster is coming. Hermes, the messenger god, imagine him small at first, not yet the sleek figure with winged sandals, just a baby, swaddled, barely a day old, and yet already restless. He wriggled free of his cradle, padded out into the fields, and this is the widely accepted detail: he stole Apollo's cattle before he could even talk properly. You blink at the absurdity. A newborn thief, herding cows backward so their tracks confused pursuers. That's Hermes in a nutshell. Clever, quick, and utterly unbothered by rules. The gods laughed, some with irritation, some with admiration. Apollo wasn't amused at first, but when Hermes soothed him with the gift of the lyre, an instrument he invented by stretching strings across a tortoise shell, the anger melted. Hermes turned theft into art, mischief into charm. You can almost see Apollo's frown breaking into reluctant laughter. Here's the quirky detail. Hermes wasn't just a messenger. He was also the guide of souls, leading the dead down into Hades. A boundary crosser, slipping between worlds, between truth and lie, between life and death. Shrines to him often stood at crossroads, carved as square pillars with his head on top. Travelers left offerings, hoping for luck, or at least safe passage past whatever strange twists lay ahead. You lean into the image. Hermes darting down a dusty road, sandals flickering with wings, a caduceus staff in hand. He's the god you'd want on your side if you were sneaking into somewhere forbidden or out of somewhere dangerous. And you realize he's a little modern. In a world of rigid, thunderous deities, Hermes feels like the friend who texts you up at 2 a.m. before dragging you on some ridiculous adventure. Historians still debate whether Hermes began as a minor boundary spirit, slowly elevated into Olympian ranks, or whether he always held a central role. Was he born a trickster, or did the myths shape him that way to fill a gap in Olympus? The question hums in the air like a riddle Hermes himself might enjoy. The fire sparks, and you swear it sounds like laughter. Hermes's presence in the story feels lighter, quicker. Even here, in the quiet of night, he has a way of keeping things from getting too heavy. You can almost hear sandals skimming past in the dark, a whisper of wings on the wind, a playful grin just beyond your sight. The storyteller chuckles softly. Not all gods wanted temples taller than mountains. Some, they say, just wanted to see if they could steal cows without getting caught. And with that, the fire flares once more, warming your face, before settling into its steady glow. Hermes has come and gone, leaving only smoke and the faint impression that your pockets should be checked. The storyteller stretches their hands toward the fire, palms glowing in the warmth. The crackle is steady now, like a heartbeat in the dark. After Hermes' darting energy, the voice drops again into a deeper, heavier tone, like iron being drawn from the earth. It is time for Hephaestus, the god of the forge, the craftsman, the maker. You see him not as golden and graceful, but bent and limping. The widely accepted story says he was born lame, or perhaps was injured when Zeus cast him down from Olympus. Either way, he grew up far from the shining halls of the other gods, not with thunder, not with glamour, but with fire and tools. And in that fire, he made wonders. You imagine his workshop now, stone walls glowing orange, sparks leaping like fireflies, the air thick with smoke and the scent of metal. He hammers steadily, not quickly, each strike a promise, each blow shaping chaos into form. Out of the flames come shields that blind enemies, thrones that trap whoever sits upon them, jewelry so fine it could almost breathe. Here's the quirky detail. Hephaestus didn't just make weapons. He crafted tiny automata, mechanical servants of gold that moved on their own. Imagine walking into his forge and seeing glittering figures pour wine or shuffle tools across the room. Ancient Greek robots, born from divine imagination and glowing metal. The gods relied on him, though some mocked his limp. They wanted his work, his creations, but they never quite welcomed him as equal. That tension hums through his myths. Even his marriage to Aphrodite, the goddess of beauty, feels like Zeus's joke, a mismatched pairing that ended, predictably, in betrayal. Yet Hephaestus endured. He wasn't dramatic, wasn't vengeful. He simply kept making. Historians still wonder whether Hephaestus reflects older traditions of smith gods, worshipped for their mysterious command of fire and metal. Was he once feared more than pitied? Did his limp symbolize the dangerous, uncontrollable power of the forge itself? The question lingers, glowing like molten ore. You lean into the rhythm of him, the steady hammer, the patience, the quiet resilience. Hephaestus may limp, but he moves forward. He may be mocked, but his work stands longer than Olympus itself. A quiet god, but indispensable. The storyteller's voice lowers further, almost a murmur. Even broken things can shape the world, they say. The fire at that moment spits a single spark upward, like a hammer strike before fading into the dark. And in that glow, you picture a forge that never dies, its fire eternal, its smoke curling softly into the night sky. The fire hums in a softer rhythm now, as if preparing itself for a different kind of warmth. Not the orange glow of Hephaestus's forge, but the quick dancing heat of a torch carried through the night. The storyteller leans back, eyes half closed, and lets the next name fall into the circle. Artemis. She appears in your mind like moonlight slipping between trees, tall, swift, with a bow in hand and hounds at her heels. Goddess of the hunt, of wild animals, of the untamed forests where shadows stretch long and silver. She is also guardian of young girls, and strangely enough, linked to childbirth as well, even though she herself swore eternal virginity. A bundle of contradictions, yet somehow seamless. The widely accepted myth says she was the twin sister of Apollo, born on the island of Delos. Their mother, Leto, endured Hera's wrath while pregnant, finding no safe place to give birth until that island rose from the sea. Artemis was born first. And here's the part that makes the story linger. She is said to have helped deliver her brother moments later, a newborn midwife, calm and sure, already a protector. And here's the quirkier detail. Some ancient towns honored her not just as a huntress, but as a goddess of dance. Festivals in her name were filled with rhythmic movement, young people circling under the night sky, their feet tapping patterns that echoed deer bounding through the woods. Artemis wasn't always stern arrows and silence. Sometimes she was laughter, music, and steps on soft grass. But her myths often show her fierce independence. You picture her now, bow drawn, warning mortals who dared intrude. Poor Actaeon, the hunter who stumbled upon her bathing, found himself transformed into a stag and torn apart by his own hounds. Harsh? Absolutely. Yet Artemis was a goddess who set boundaries and defended them without hesitation. Historians still wonder whether Artemis absorbed traits from older pre-Greek deities of fertility and the moon, reshaped over centuries into the chaste, untouchable figure the myths record. Was she once more maternal, less remote? The answer flickers like moonlight, never fully caught. You lean into her presence, cool silver air brushing your face, the snap of a bowstring, the hush of leaves in a forest where she moves unseen. Artemis is not the warmth of a hearth or the blaze of Olympus, but the stillness of midnight woods, the reassurance that someone strong is watching from the shadows. The storyteller lets the silence stretch, then whispers, "Some gods want temples. Artemis wants only her forest." The fire dips low, sparks curling upward like small constellations, as if echoing her distant stars. The fire has burned low, its glow red and steady, almost like embers breathing. After Artemis's cool forest air, the storyteller's voice shifts, warming again, richer, like wine poured slowly into a cup. The name they speak next is softer, rounder, Aphrodite. You see her rise not from earth or sky, but from the sea itself, foam curling around her, waves parting as if eager to cradle her. The widely accepted myth says she was born from the foam when the sea was struck by Uranus's severed remains, an origin both violent and strangely serene. Yet from that beginning came beauty, desire, and the sway of every heart. Aphrodite, goddess of love. You picture her walking to shore, her hair trailing wet behind her, every flower along the sand blooming as she steps. Doves flutter overhead, shells shine brighter. She isn't just beauty, she is the pull of attraction, the spark that draws one person toward another, whether gentle or reckless. Here's the quirky detail. Aphrodite wasn't always seen as soft and delicate. In Cyprus and other older traditions, she was honored as a war goddess, armed and fierce, a reminder that love can ignite conflict as quickly as it can soothe. In some places, she bore armor. In others, she was tied to seafaring, guiding sailors safely to shore. A goddess with layers, not just a pretty face. The myths swirl around her. She marries Hephaestus, but takes lovers freely, most famously Ares, the god of war. Their affair once trapped in a golden net, exposed before the laughter of Olympus. And yet, even in humiliation, Aphrodite seems untouchable, like beauty itself, mocked, envied, but never diminished. Historians still debate whether she emerged from the blending of Eastern fertility goddesses with local Greek traditions. Was she meant to be tender, or dangerous, or both? Her origin remains a tide of possibilities, as shifting as the sea she rose from. You lean into the rhythm of her presence, the warmth on your skin like sunlight, the rush in your chest like sudden affection, the dizzy uncertainty of standing too close to someone who makes the air itself feel charged. Aphrodite embodies all of that. Every crush, every longing, every joy and ache mixed together. The storyteller lowers their voice, almost teasing. Some gods conquer with thunder. Aphrodite conquers with a glance. The fire stirs faintly, and you think of waves rolling gently against a shore, foam whispering on the sand, each one carrying her name. The embers glow steady, and the storyteller's voice deepens again, heavy with armor and echo. After Aphrodite's soft shimmer, this tale brings iron, bronze, and dust. It is the story of Ares, the god of war. You feel him before you see him, the ground trembling faintly, the sharp tang of blood on the air, the rush of heat that comes not from the hearth, but from the clash of bodies and weapons. Ares strides in, broad and loud, his presence less about strategy and more about raw force. Unlike Athena, who embodies war's wisdom and planning, Ares is the fury itself. The moment the charge begins, the heartbeat too fast, the chaos too strong to control. The widely accepted detail says he was hated, even among the gods. Zeus himself called him troublesome, destructive, a necessary evil rather than a figure of admiration. Yet mortals still honored him, especially warriors who knew the truth. Fear and rage walk every battlefield. To ignore Ares was to ignore the storm that crashes in every fight. Here's the quirky detail. Despite his image as a relentless warrior, Ares fathered children known as the Amazons, fierce warrior women who lived apart, ruled themselves, and rode into legend. In their myths, you see not just Ares' violence, but also his role in shaping powerful lineages that defied expectation. You imagine him now, spear in hand, shield ringing with every blow. Around him, dogs of war bark and howl, shadows of conflict that follow wherever he goes. His chariot wheels grind against stone, sparks flying. He is terrifying, yes, but also oddly lonely. Few gods enjoy his company. Even in myths where he triumphs, Ares seems restless, unsatisfied, as if his nature allows no peace. Historians still wonder whether Ares reflects an older, foreign war deity absorbed into Greek lore, or whether he was always meant to be disliked. A reminder that war may be necessary, but never noble. Was he a warning more than a hero? The question echoes like footsteps in an empty battlefield. You lean into his presence for a moment, uneasy but steady, the weight of armor pressing down, the ringing in your ears after a clash, the strange silence that follows when the dust finally settles. That too is Ares, raw, fleeting, leaving only scars behind. The storyteller's voice softens, almost pitying. Some gods bring laughter, some bring harvest. Ares only brings silence after the storm. The fire cracks once, sharp like a spear striking stone, before sinking back into a steady, low burn. The circle of firelight flickers lower now, softening again after the crash of Ares. The storyteller breathes slowly, letting the echoes of battle fade. In their pause, the night feels quieter, calmer, as if the sky itself waits for the next name. And then, like a lantern lit in a darkened hall, the sound comes. Hestia. You feel warmth return, but not the fierce blaze of a forge or a battlefield torch. This is a steadier heat, gentler, like the glow from a hearth you've known all your life. Hestia is goddess of the home, the hearth, the center around which families gather. She is not loud, not boastful. She rarely takes part in quarrels or tricks. Instead, she is presence, quiet, grounding, necessary. The widely accepted myth tells that she was the firstborn of Cronus and Rhea, swallowed like her siblings and later freed by Zeus. Yet unlike them, she never sought glory on Olympus. She stayed at the hearth, both in the homes of mortals and in the palace of the gods. Every offering, every prayer, began with her name. She was the flame lit first, the one that burned without end. Here's the quirkier detail. In Athens, her hearth fire was considered so sacred that when a new colony was founded, flames from her altar would be carried across the sea to light the new settlement. Imagine that, a single flame traveling on a ship, connecting distant lands through the idea of home, a soft tether of fire stretching across the world. You picture her now, seated quietly, robes simple, gaze serene. No thunderbolts, no golden nets, no vengeance. Just a flame steady in the dark, never drawing attention, but always giving light. She feels like the pause between breaths, the comfort of returning to a familiar room, the sense that even in chaos, something constant still burns. Historians still wonder whether Hestia's quiet nature was a reflection of older, earth-centered traditions, where the hearth was seen as sacred long before Olympian myths reshaped the gods. Was she the hidden foundation of worship, overshadowed later by flashier deities? The question lingers, soft as ash floating in a chimney. You lean closer to her warmth now. Not too hot, not flickering, but even, gentle. The kind of glow you'd fall asleep beside without worry. The storyteller smiles faintly, voice nearly a whisper. Some gods roar, some gods blaze. Hestia only stays, quietly, and keeps the fire alive. The flames in your circle seem to agree, burning steady and calm, wrapping the night in a hush. The fire holds steady, a calm ember glow that feels almost like Hestia herself still lingers. The storyteller straightens a little though, and the tone shifts, not to thunder, not to fury, but to something more inevitable. You hear the name roll out slowly, like the turning of seasons. Hades. You feel the ground cool beneath you, as though the earth itself breathes differently when his name is spoken. Hades is not fire, not storm, not chaos. He is silence, depth, and shadows. God of the underworld, brother of Zeus and Poseidon, ruler not of the skies above or seas that move, but of the quiet realm below, where roots twist and the dead drift in their endless home. The widely accepted myth paints him as stern and unyielding. He does not meddle in Olympus' quarrels often. He does not chase or boast, he rules his realm with patience, with stillness. The dead belong to him, and he does not forget it. When mortals die, they pass through his gates, across the river, into his keeping. Here's the quirkier detail. Hades was not seen as cruel, not in the way later imaginations painted him. He was strict, yes, and distant, but also just. Temples to him were rare, yet when sacrifices were offered, they were done with care and secrecy. And strangely enough, he was tied to wealth. The hidden riches of the earth, gold and gems buried deep, were called the gifts of Hades. So in one breath, he was death, but in another, he was prosperity. You picture him now. Dark robes, a crown of black iron or shining obsidian, a key at his side to lock the gates of his realm. Beside him, perhaps, his queen Persephone, half in sunlight, half in shadow. Their story, with its cycles of loss and return, speaks of winter and spring, of endings that are never final. Historians still wonder whether Hades was ever worshipped openly, or if his name was too heavy for daily prayers. Did mortals whisper to him in fear, or in respect? Was he less a villain and more a keeper of balance? The debate remains as layered as the soil itself, filled with mystery. You lean into the feeling of him now, not terrifying, but quieting. The hush of a deep cave, the coolness of stone under your hand, the reminder that time slows for everyone eventually. Hades is not the scream of loss, but the silence after, the steady keeper of all that was. The storyteller's voice lowers, almost fading into the coals. Some gods promise joy, some gods promise storms. Hades only promises what comes to all. The fire dips lower, a darker red, as though even it bows to him. The night feels long now, stretched and softened, the fire burning low, its glow a final thread between waking and sleep. The storyteller's voice rises again, not heavy like Hades, not quiet like Hestia, but steady, commanding, balanced. The last name to be spoken is Zeus. You feel the air shift, cooler, sharper, like the breath before a storm. Clouds gather in your mind's eye, thunder rolling at the edges, a bright crack of lightning waiting to strike. Zeus, king of the gods, ruler of Olympus, the figure who both unites and unsettles. The widely accepted story says he was the youngest child of Cronus and Rhea, hidden at birth, raised in secret until he was strong enough to challenge his father. He freed his siblings, overthrew the old order, and took the skies as his dominion. His thunderbolt became the symbol of authority, his eagle the emblem of reach. No council on Olympus began without him. But here's the quirky detail. Zeus wasn't just a god of thunder. In local traditions, he had countless forms. Zeus, the protector of strangers. Zeus, the guardian of household oaths. Zeus of the marketplace. Zeus of the oak tree. He wasn't one god, but many faces, tied to every need of human life. People prayed to him for rain, for safety, for justice, for luck in games. He was everywhere, in every crack of thunder, and in every law upheld. You picture him now, bearded, crowned, holding his bolt, seated on a throne at the peak of Olympus. Yet not always noble, his myths are full of wanderings, of disguises, of love affairs that ripple through generations. His power was supreme, but his flaws made him all too vivid, almost human in their excess. Historians still wonder whether Zeus's supremacy reflected the shift in Greek society, moving from local earth and hearth deities toward centralized kingship. Was he a divine mirror of human politics, a heavenly monarch shaped by the rise of mortal kings? The question lingers, like thunder that rolls but does not yet break. You lean into his presence, the vastness of sky overhead, the electricity in the air before a storm, the promise that order, however flawed, holds the world together. Zeus embodies that, not perfection, but rule, not peace, but structure. The storyteller speaks one last time, voice solemn but calm. Some gods guard homes, some guard seas, some guard shadows. Zeus guards the sky, and with it, all above. The fire lowers to a faint glow, a final warmth. The circle feels complete now. The gods have all been spoken, their stories winding down like smoke curling into the night.